Thank you very much for being with me today. I just want to, and everybody else who's joined in. My name is James Brown. I'm the Vice President of SASH, the Society for American Soccer History. And I'm here today with Stefan Van Loock, the Belgian PA spokesman. How are you doing, Stefan?
Very well, thank you. It's a great day for all of us. So happy to celebrating this with you all and having to prepare a little bit of it because it's such a long time ago. So no, I'm happy to join you.
Well, that's really great. It's a really fantastic opportunity to be able to share the 90 years anniversary with Belgian spirit, because we always, every year we try and celebrate in a certain way, in more of an audio way or visual way, just through social media. But this year is very special because it allows us to focus on some of the things that were the most important 90 years ago, and we're very lucky to have that opportunity. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the voyage, because that's one of the most spectacular, building up to the World Cup. That was one of the great moments when the Conte Verde left the Mediterranean and headed its way all the way down to South America. Before that, a week prior, the U.S. had left. Just to remind everybody, the U.S. team left on June 13th from Hoboken, New Jersey. And they met with the Mexican national team and then started to make their way down towards the equator, past the equator, and then down to Rio. And so, Stefan, from a European perspective, the Belgian team was met in Barcelona, is that correct? On the 21st?
Yes, they left first Brussels, of course, with the famous train journey to Paris, in which luggage got lost, and they headed back after one day, and one person had to take care of it, and arrived in Barcelona with a delay of one day, and just before the Conte Verde left for South America. So yeah, it was already a not so good start of the trip for the team and the referees on board. But yes, that day leaving Barcelona for this, what first sight looked like an eternal journey, yeah, it was a kind of a school trip sensation to those guys, and it became a more solitude trip after a week or so. But it was yeah, it was the adventure of the World Cup. It's almost as epic as the World Cup itself. It was the journey from the European teams to Montevideo, probably also from the American team to Montevideo, because for all of us it was a first time. So yeah, it was a great day.
And you were not alone. You were with the Romanian team,
yeah,
who had left from Genoa, and then they picked up the French team in along with Jules in Villefranche-sur-Mer,
yeah,
along with Jules Rimet, and that was quite exciting because that's where everybody embarked together with the famous victory with Golden Wings trophy that was placed in a very secure area for keeping it from prying eyes, and I'm sure that Jules Rimet was quite careful and secretive of making sure that the whereabouts were not really known, because that was a very precious item to have.
Yeah.
And just so I've heard from Yves Rimet, Jules Rimet's grandson, and he lives just above Nice in France. And he and I spoke just recently. He had been under the weather for a bit, but he wanted to wish everybody a happy 90th anniversary. and you know, that was extremely precious for him, you know, and his claim to fame was the 1938 French World Cup, when he was part of the lottery. He was the one picking out the balls. He was standing on top of the table, picking the lottery balls for the pool stages.
Yep.
So that was that's quite nice, and that was very, very nice to have Yves Rimet's well wishes for this 90th anniversary.
How old is he now, the grandson of Jules Rimet?
Oh, well, I want to say he was probably about 4 and 38. Oh, he's about, let's round it off to 1935. No, 1933, 34. So
Must be in his
he's in
80s
his
now.
mid-80s. Yeah, mid-80s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's really, you know, he's mentally, he's in great shape. And
Okay.
it was a pleasure to spend time to talk with him,
Yeah.
you know, years ago.
Nice to hear.
Yeah, you know, they have a beautiful home in the hills overlooking Nice, and it was a very special time to be able to dig through documents and precious items that they preserved. But they also gave a good collection over to the town hall of Villefranche-sur-Mer, so that they could have their own special 1930 exhibit. So, you know, so it includes like a smoking pipe of Yves, of Jules Rimet. So that's quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the well wishes of Villefranche-sur-Mer, their town hall, and sent the best for our 90th anniversary. So, from a Belgian perspective, what were the conditions like on the Comte de Verdun?
The conditions were what they were. Luxury on one side concerning all the food and the delicious meals they received, and the rest and the swimming pool and the atmosphere and the sun beating on them. And on the other side, the training hours, which were very early in the morning by lottery. They had been chosen or picked, let's say, to train at 6 a.m., which is very early. And the problem is that training at 6 a.m. on the deck is fine. You have to run. They had to run in tours and be silent as well, because other people were still asleep in their cabins. So it was not too easy for the coach, Hector Tortenhoeting, who was there. And so they had some gymnastic exercises. Training with a ball was difficult, because when the ball went overboard, you couldn't recollect it. So that was a bit difficult. And the biggest problem was, in fact, the waiting hours between the end of the training and the start of their breakfast, because they started to train first and they had to wait until the last for their breakfast. And one day, the coach didn't like that too much. His players were starving from the hunger. And when he saw a waiter passing with a plate with omelets to another table, he got so furious that he spilled over the whole table. He was called into the captain's office to apologize him for this behavior. And so, but anyway, from that moment on, the Belgians got their breakfast soon as their training was over. So that was some specific event on that boat. But conditions were what they were. If you take a boat to cross the Atlantic and to go to a major tournament and you have to train, well, that's the way you have to train. There's no other thing. Maybe I read the United States stopped alongside the route 1 or 2 times and could train on landside, if I'm well informed. But in European teams, they had to cross all over and just made a short stop in Rio and in Santos. But that was not to train, but just to buy some fruit and some drinks.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to stop in Bermuda overnight, and also down in Rio to play some 4-on-4 matches. So that was really quite a nice opportunity to be able to play some warm up, some tune up matches. You know, The U.S. was very fortunate to. I mean, the SS Monargo was what it was. It was a significantly smaller ship in terms of
Yeah.
size than the Conte Verde, but you know they had a swimming pool. They had decks, you know, that they were able to train on. You know, they weren't the best conditions, but they were lucky to have been able to spend time with Mexico, and then heading down to Rio and spending time there just enough to, you know, a number of the players they were a bit seasick, and that was quite unfortunate. It was Jimmy Douglas and Andy Auld. They weren't seafaring men, so that was a very nice break from their standpoint. I guess they didn't have enough space in order to play, you know, to kick the ball around too much. And I understand on the Conte Verde that the Romanian team, one guy kicked it with good strength, and it went right over the edge.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to
jump after it
because he was quite a good swimmer.
Bit too risky, I think.
Yeah, they're like, we don't think you're really going to be able to catch up, you know.
Yeah.
So that was quite. You know, you guys are fortunate to have that nice luxury. You know, we did have some nice dining, you know, dining facilities. Looked quite elaborate, but they were definitely happy to make it down to Montevideo in good time. You know, the U.S. got down there with Mexico on July 1st.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
we arrived at the 5th of July or so. Was there also a celebration on the US Monago when they crossed the equator? Because there were big celebrations going on at the Conte Verde with the games on the deck and a big meal afterwards.
Yes, there were games. There were disguises. You know, everybody had disguises, and it was the Neptune. It was the Neptune.
The Neptune is the god of the sea.
The Neptune baptism, or you know, that type of you know, that type of ceremony. So people were covered with you know, cream and eggs and flour and dressed up.
Also on the Monargo, also on your boat.
Yes. Oh yeah. And we, you know, we have a number of photos, personal photos of players being dressed up like women. So it was quite it was quite a festival. So that is nice. So we were lucky to have to have pretty much a good 2 weeks in advance before you know, the first matches started. So tell me about the Belgians' arrival and, you know, getting acclimated to Montevideo and their hotel. And
well, it was quite difficult. The arrival at Montevideo on July the 5th was huge, because the crowd was cheering at the players. They were very happy. They welcomed the European team, so that was a relief. So at least those teams are there, so we can really talk about a world championship, because the European teams had arrived, of which Belgium was the first to have subscribed to it. But then the conditions, winter conditions. They come from a boat where the sun was beating all the time, and then they passed the equator, and then it got winter and it was cold in Montevideo. They had a good hotel, because I can judge it because I stayed in it myself. Although the problem was that the hotel they had booked was fully full when they arrived. It was overbooked, and they had to go to another hotel, and they arrived in a short hostel called Hostal Las Palmas, which was in Positos. Those days it was still a town close to the beach. So yeah, they were not too happy with this because conditions there were absolutely not okay. The food was not good. The weather was not good. So the training conditions were hard. They had to train sometimes on the beach, very windy, rainy. Some people got not only homesick, but also land sick. And that is a kind of state in which you are when your brain tells you what to do, but your body cannot respond. So it's a consequence of being too long on a boat, feeling that you're on water. Once you come on land, you still have the feeling you're on water, and that makes them sick. So a few players got really were really influenced by this. So that were the conditions in which they arrived, but they had the crowd behind them because Belgium was, as I said, the first European team to say, okay, we participate. So the Uruguayan crowd were very happy, and so in the game, as I read, the home fans well did not turn their back on the USA, but they supported Belgium, as I read. So well, it didn't help too much, unfortunately, but anyway. So yeah, we had 1 week in advance. And the extra kilos taken on the boat because the amount of good food was so the training that they had could not compensate the big amount of good food on the boat, and so the good life, it was like a Club Med, as we say in Europe, was the good life. And so yeah, they could feel it because they were considered as maybe one of the favorites because of their individual talents, and they beat France in a friendly a few weeks before. So they were considered as favorites, not maybe for the final, for the big trophy, but at least to survive the group. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. They were also not too happy not being a seeded team because they thought, well, we Belgium thought that because of the individual talents and the good results we had in the past, and the fact that the United States is not a country. So we said, yes, we would have preferred and maybe deserved to be a seeded team. But then the US said, yeah, are the biggest country, so we should be the seeded team. And well, that was the first small, well, it was not an incident, it was just a disappointment from the Belgian side. Yeah, and then the game started, and we were quite impressed by the athletics physiognomy of the American players, and yeah,
Well,
it didn't work.
Tell me about the more in the last few days building up to the match. You know, were there since you didn't have enough time on the boat to do really strenuous training, how were you able to compensate? Were you able to have practice matches? You know, the US played Nacional.
Yeah, we did it after the World Cup. When we got knocked out, then they played 2 matches. But in the preparation, in the build-up, there were no matches against club teams because yeah, it was first to adapt to the new conditions, train a few times on pitch and on the beach, and then yeah, before you know, it was match day. So and so yeah, it was early dark, it was winter. Yeah, the conditions were not okay. So, but they had to keep. There was nothing else than training. There was not the things the footballers have today, in which they can find some distraction. But it must have been quite a hard time. Certainly, when several players were homesick and yeah, and would have preferred maybe to stay home.
Yeah, that was. I think the U.S. team was very fortunate with their schedule. Their seasons allowed them to play in very harsh conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were playing in January. The dead of winter. They were playing just up until December.
Yeah.
December, and then back at it in the dead of winter in January, February. So they did have that they did have that that habit of being
Hmm.
used to those types of conditions.
Yeah.
And their trainer, Bob Cole, was uh, Jacques Cole, he was very, very insistent on calisthenics and gymnastics.
Yeah.
And he
Hmm.
said, you guys know how to play ball,
Hmm.
but if you can run like the wind, then all of those talents that you individually have, everything's going to come together in a nice fluid movement up and down the field, you know. So that's why they spent most of their time just running and running and running.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very little ball work, you know.
Yeah. Physically, we were not that strong because after half an hour in the game, the Belgian team was nearly dead. So physically, it was a disaster, and so we were not prepared as it should be to start in that game. And we missed, and that is maybe a very important thing I didn't mention yet. We missed the star player of the era, and that was Raymond Braine. And Raymond Braine is the Eden Hazard of the 1930s for Belgium. So he was really a star player with very good playing skills. But he was, in Belgium, it was still forbidden to play professional football. So you could not earn money out of your career as a football player. And he opened a pub. And the Belgian Federation said, yeah, but while opening a pub, you win money thanks to the fact that you're a player. So because now people will come to your pub, have drinks there. If you should not be a player, maybe they wouldn't come in this big numbers. So they suspended him. It was being voted. They suspended him. And they shot the Belgian FA, to which I work for now. They shot himself. I think my boss will forgive me telling this. But Belgian FA, they shot himself in the foot by suspending their best player. So his brother, Braine, he played, but Raymond Braine was the biggest star, and so he chose to leave Belgium. He was suspended and could go and play in Czechoslovakia. So he played for Sparta Prague, one of the biggest teams of those days in Europe. And then afterwards he came back. But still, it's still harsh to the family on this day even, because I talked on the phone to his youngest son, which we will meet in a few days, and it's still it's still not over. So they still feel sorry for what happened there. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to jump in. This is Tom. Hello, love what you're doing.
Hi.
And the U.S. squad had two of their best attackers not join. One due to injury, Davy Brown. They called him the Little Giant. Scored over 50 goals in league play in 1924-25 season, I believe. And then Archie Stark, who was the very first player admitted to the National Soccer Hall of Fame, and he was the star of the era. So amongst us, we're like, what would the U.S. squad have been capable of if they brought their two best attacking players?
And even Seamus O'Brien. O'Brien.
There were others. Yeah.
He wasn't an eligible U.S. citizen, and that leads me to the next part. From what my grandfather mentioned in an interview, he said that the Belgian delegation was they were of the belief that the U.S. had recruited ringers, basically British ringers, to come and play. So the chaperone delegate, Uruguayan delegate, held a conference on July 7th in Montevideo, a press conference, just to make sure to basically calm any type of worries that the U.S. team had gone overseas to bring players and have players who are not naturalized U.S. citizens, because that was one of the regulations of the 1930 World Cup. is that you had to be nationalized.
Yeah.
And one of the last ones to be nationalized before heading to Montevideo was my grandfather. So they left on June 13th in Hoboken, from Hoboken. And then on June 15th, they received a telegram from the Bronx court approving his naturalization because his father was a naturalized citizen. So that was the only unsure element of the U.S. team, of those 6 questionable British players. And we didn't have a problem, this problem between amateurism and professionalism. So that wasn't a concern from our side.
Here it was a big concern, yeah.
Yeah.
Because many teams also, that's what I read, is that some teams in Europe, because the FIFA World Cup was there for professional players also, and
exactly,
didn't go because they feared it was not meant for professionals. So it was not, I don't think it was very clear to everyone.
Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons why Britain did not,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't come back. They left. They came back. They didn't participate. It's not just because they felt that they were the originators, the creators, and nobody could do it better than they. But it was also a big question of amateur professional questions, and also time. Listen, our clubs are going to be losing a lot of money, because of players being absent for almost 2 to 3 months. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
that's true.
When we talk about the day of the match on Sunday, July 13th, so it was like you said, there was snow falling, and this is one of the first time, just flurries, but cold enough, and it was quite muddy because Uruguay, Montevideo, they had over 90 days of nonstop rainfall. So that not only impeded the construction of the Estadío Centenario, but also the surrounding fields, in that battle park that was created around and had Pocitos and the Grand Parc Central. So that was one of the very, very tough field conditions that the U.S. and Belgium had to deal with. So there, I'm looking at I have the opportunity to look at my grandfather's manager's report. That every player was given a hand typed, personalized typed account of the tour, and here they were just saying that there were so many mud puddles that it was just not possible to count, so numerous that you could no longer, you just felt like you were playing in a sea of mud. But again, that was one of the strengths of the US team, is that in their professional league, they often played in the mud, in the rain, and in the snow. So
the weather conditions were in favor of the United States, as I read, and after a while you couldn't even recognize the players and the numbers because they were all black by the mud. So and still I read that the Belgium created the most chances, but they failed in scoring. So, or they kicked the ball wide and the ball had to be searched for, and so time got lost. So it must have been a strange atmosphere.
Well, the U.S. had to get to shake off their quote unquote sea legs or land legs. They needed to get through the first 20 minutes. Their defenders were not clearing properly. The forwards were shooting, left and right, but not center. And as I'm sure my grandfather was cautioned, as he had always been throughout his whole career before and after the World Cup, offsides was a huge, he was a risk taker, you know? He would always be at the very, very edge, you know? So if there was a chance that he'd get a ball, catch onto a ball coming through and he's not called offsides, then he's gone. But he was often called for offsides, and that's it's unfortunate, but that was one of the things that was one of the problems, because Bart McGee scores the first goal, and afterwards there are numerous chances, and then Flory scores the second goal,
and we thought it was offside.
Exactly, and that was the uproar. And you know what? You were probably right. So
could be. Anyway, when the attack was there, the Belgian defense stood still because thinking it was offside, and so McGee, was it McGee? No, McGee made the 1-0, and so
he created the first goal.
Yeah. Flory made the second.
The second goal. Yeah. And that's. Those are the risks that you had to take, you know. We were lucky to have a great guardian of the Citadel in Jimmy Douglas. He wasn't afraid to box out his own defenders, you know, just to clear the penalty box, no matter who was in his way. So,
there was always or the goalkeeper or the good defending team, because we weren't defending well. As I read, our defenders didn't come and help the midfield players. So there was no tactical plan behind the game, and that was a bit of a pity. That's what the critics wrote the day after. Even John Langenus, who was also designed to report for the only Belgian sports newspaper there was, called La Vie Sportive, was founded by the federation, and so he wrote his articles, and they were published once every fortnight. And even he said no, the Belgians were absolutely not good, and after half an hour physically they were down. And what I read also that your grandfather was started the nicest attack and goal. The 3-0 was afterwards said of that it was the nicest goal of the game when it became 3-0. He centered the ball, and then Pettenhout skipped it over our goalkeeper, who left his goal far too early and lost his cap on the way, which was very cheerful for the crowd. So they had something. Although the game was not good, they had something to warm them up, because it was cold. The stadium was full. Even the Uruguayan team was there to watch the match. That's why this match is being officially named as the inaugural game, because there was another game busy at the same time, which started earlier. That's another view of the history. So
exactly. They both started
started late because
you know, it's funny, that story about my grandfather, making a beautiful run down the wing and delivering the most unselfish lob over the goalie's head to Patton. He said, "Who are you kidding?" He said, "I was trying to shoot. I just mishit it." You know? So, but it was a very, very kind recollection of W.R. Cummings when he made the manager's report. All the boys, it really was a moment of boys to men. If you want to think about the U.S. team on an international level, that's where you say this is the moment, a boys to men moment. So
it is. I have to be very honest. I'll make a small comparison to our women's team actual. So last year I was with our women's team in the United States for the friendly in Los Angeles. We lost 6-0, and it was women against girls. So it's the same. It's the sporting culture in the United States. Also in those days already was much more different in, I think, any sports, whether you practice baseball, rugby, American football, ice hockey, basketball, or soccer. it were sportsmen, and in Belgium, yeah, it was not professional at the time. In the US, maybe it was already. And also you are born with sports, and also the education system is based on sports. And in Belgium, it is not the case, and we still feel it. Although we have a great generation now, but it is, it's in the ladies' sports now, football. The difference was the same as you made for the 1930 game between USA and Belgium, boys against men.